So yesterday we have discussed about the Spring Web MVC architecture. So not only Spring Web MVC, any framework will be with the almost all same architecture. Like it is coming up with the front controller design pattern, and then that front controller will takes the request and then will gives the response back. So request and then response serving is always from a single entry point, and then the this framework servlet will delegate the request to the controller classes, and then controller class will gives the view information back to this front controller, and then the front controller will locate the view name and then display the view details back to this customers. So everything is handling from the dispatcher servlet, meaning the front controller only. So today let us try to build one Spring Web MVC application, and with that Spring Web MVC application we will observe the problems or the issues that not issues, but the configuration stuff that we need to take care in the Spring, let us see. And then when we go to the Spring Boot, how it has been eliminated is also we will see. So for that, what I will do is, let me take a new workspace. So let me go to my IDE, and then let me take the new workspace. I'm just starting this STS. So throughout this session, we will use this Spring Tool Suite IDE. So where you can download this Spring Tool Suite IDE. So I will explain where you can download this Spring Tool Suite IDE. It is not creating. Let me add it just like 8 AM. Perfect. So where we can download this Spring Tool Suite. So let's go here and then ask for Spring Tool Suite download. So there is a tools option for us in spring.io. Go to that tools option and scroll down. Here we can download. For example, if it is the Windows 64 or 32, just click on here. Then we will get this jar file, Spring Tool Suite jar file, like this, like how I got. You will also get one jar file. So this is the jar file. Extract the jar file. Once we extract the jar file, then we will get this Spring Tool Suite. I'll explain now how we can extract it. So just let it download. Now
I didn't understand that.
One moment. Okay, let me go to my, I think I already have downloaded here. If you can see, yes, this is the jar. So like this, you will get the jar file. When you extract it, you will get this folder, and go to this UI, not UI, contents, STS. So here is your ID. Got it right? So once you got that jar file, so you download this jar file. Once you got that jar file, just extract that jar file. You will get one directory, and in that directory, go to contents, go to STS, and this is what your ID. Just open it. It will be open like how I have opened here, right? Choose any of the workspace location. So workspace location meaning when you run it, it will ask you to choose the workspace location like this. So give any of your directory in your machine where you can keep your applications work and all, right? So give that location as a workspace. Fine. So finally, our IDE will be like this. So let me go and then get the jar file just now we downloaded, and also extract and showcase you if possible. Just let me go and then see these downloads. Yes, this is downloaded. Now let me go here. Just create one folder called IDE, STS IDE, then paste it here. Yes, done. Now just extract it. Extract it. So it is extracting. Once after it extracted, yes, go to here, go to contents.zip, just extract it. Again, extract the contents. It might take little time because it contains the, right? So it might take little time. So once you extract, you will be able to see the IDE in that contents directory. Then you right click on that and then attach to your taskbar, and then you can work with it daily. However, let us wait till it extracted. Fine. So in the time, let it be extract. Let us go to our IDE, whatever I opened, and then let us create the project. To showcase like how the IDE to download and then get. Probably now you got an idea how to get the IDE, isn't it? Now it is extracting. So once after extract, then you will get the IDE here. Okay. So mostly you might got an idea now how to get the IDE. Perfect. Now what we will do, our next step is, let us go and then create one Spring Web MVC application. In that Spring Web MVC application, let us configure the dispatcher servlet. Let us take one controller. Let us take one view page. Okay. Three things we will do. Let us take one view page. Let us take one controller. Let us take one dispatcher servlet, and then let us access, and then we will see what it will be, how it will be. Okay. So just a moment. Fine. So now what we will do, let us create first one Spring Web MVC project. So for that, let me go to the IDE. So what I have opened, create a project. So before doing that, let me close all other projects. C is the 7 AM batch IDE, and then so just let me close this. Just let me close this. Exit. Right now, yes. Here, let me create the project. So create project, and the project of type Maven. So create project. My machine seems to be a little slow. Just bear with me. Yes, create a simple project. Create a simple project. Just click on create a simple project. Click on next, and then give the group ID. Group ID meaning the organization. One moment. So let us give the group ID. Group ID meaning the company or the organization who is funding to implement this project, or who is the owner of this project. So let us say com.dsoft is the group ID. So DURGASOFT, that means, let me choose this one. And artifact ID is, we are implementing a retail commerce project going forward also, whose name is Shopify. So Shopify commerce, Shopify commerce, Shopify commerce. Just for our sake, let me give the MVC. And remember, project name should be always in a small letters. And let us take it as a var, right? So now just click on finish, right? So group ID meaning the company who is sponsoring for developing this application. And then artifact ID is the nothing but the name of the application. And then packaging is var, whether it is jar or var. And the initial version of the packaging is always the snapshot version. Snapshot meaning it is under development. Snapshot meaning there are two things, snapshot and release. Snapshot meaning under development. Release meaning after development is completed, we will release it to the next environments like QA environment or production environment. Okay, but snapshot meaning it is under development meaning. So just click on finish. Now our application will create the Maven structure. It just create a Maven structure with the details what we have given, right? With the details what we have given, it will just create a Maven project structure. Fine. So see this, it is completing. Once after this completion, then only we have to go here. Now if you can see here, it is showing the pom.xml file. So pom.xml file, it is showing with the error. First of all, let us, once you create the project, see JRE system. Sorry guys, it seems I lost the connection. Just let me share my screen. I'm so sorry. I lost the screen disable option. Just let me request the host. Can you give me the host access, please? Just right click on my name and then make me as a host. Sorry, I lost the host action. Host option. Can you please give me the host option? Preeti got the host access now. Preeti, are you there? Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I got the host access now. Just let me share my screen. Yes. So what I'm saying is basically here 1.5 when you come, when you will get, go to here, click on alternate JRE, go to installed JREs and add JRE, select and then browse for the directory where the your Java installed, usually in the program files. So your Java, when you install, it will go to program files. Just let me go back and then see in my program files. Probably in my case, Java is not in the program files. In my case, Java is in the softwares list. So till here, before the bin directory, you have to choose before the bin directory, you have to choose the JDK. Now, once you choose the JDK, then it will come like this. Click on apply and then close and then choose that JDK, right? So finish and then apply and close. Now our project is with the JDK 1.8 compliance. Minimum 1.8 compliance is required for us. Next, pom.xml file we have chosen. Just let me go to this pom.xml file. Just let me go to pom.xml file and see this packaging type var we have given. So remember, when a packaging type var we have given in the Maven projects, then the project structure what the Maven is created will expect the web.xml file. Will expect the web.xml file. But as we gonna implement the annotation, complete annotation driven based application, zero XML application, so we should not include this web.xml in our project. For that, it is also suggesting us to enable this property. Fail on web XML is true. So what we need to do? It is now failing, right? It is now giving the error when there is no web XML. So what we can do now, just let's say properties by properties. So take properties by properties. In properties by properties, take this fail on web XML. So if there is no web XML, don't fail. There is no web XML, don't fail. Fail on web XML is by default to true, isn't it? Now we disabling that, don't fail if there will be no web XML. Now when we given this property, that error is gone. Perfect. Now the next thing. So from now onwards, let me write something, because this is very important observations that we need to record while doing this application. So the same observations will be applicable or not while we are implementing the Spring Boot application. Let us see. First, let me observe the things. Okay, number one, WebXML is failed. Then I was rectified it by just adding the properties. Then number two is what, now we thought to implement the WebMVC application, right? Spring WebMVC applications. Required to attach the jars as well, right? We require to attach the jars as well. So let me note down that observation here in a separate text file. Just let me take it. Welcome. Fine. Just also right. So do step one. Add the dependencies. So today is date 8th June 2022 and topic Spring Boot, and this is the demo 3, I believe. However, just let us go and then now add the Spring WebMVC, not Spring WebMVC application. Building Spring WebMVC application or creating Spring WebMVC application. That is the topic, isn't it? Fine. So what is the first step? We need to add the dependencies. What is the meaning of dependency here? Dependency meaning jar files. So that our application can use is called as dependency. In Maven terminology, the jar files are called as the dependencies. So now go to this dependencies section. Don't confuse, please don't confuse. When you open the pom.xml file, always for us, the pom.xml file will be opened like this. Here, the options you can see, overview, dependencies, dependency hierarchy, effective pom, right? These are all the options you can see. In this, go to the dependencies section. Now click on this add button and let us add the dependency here. So what is the dependencies? Group ID. We are using the Spring framework, right? So we are using the Spring framework, right? So let us add the Spring framework as the group ID. So org.spring framework as the group ID. And what is the artifacts? We want the Spring-WebMVC related jar file we want. And version is what, 4.3.19. Release 4.3.19.release. Let us choose. And if you can see here, there is a scope for the dependencies. So compile provided runtime test system. Each and every scope that you should have to know first. Before knowing that, first just let me add this dependency compile. So now dependency is added. Just let me save it. So as soon as I saved it, it is trying to download it. It is trying to downloading the dependency, but said this dependency is not there. Whatever the dependency I was added, it is saying that dependency is not there. Why it was not there? Let us go and then check in the Maven repository. So Spring Web MVC Maven dependency. Just type for it. Go here, Spring-Web MVC. I was given 4.3.19 release. So which it is saying was not there in the Maven repository. But let us verify. Okay, so what I have given 4.3.19 I have given. Just let me scroll down. Yes, 4.3.19 release is there, but why it was not resolved? Did I do any mistakes? 4.3.19 release Spring-Web MVC, correct only. org.spring framework. So let us see why it is not resolved for me. And let us go here and then check for the dependency. A lot of vulnerabilities were reported, but that's okay. Spring-Web MVC 4.3.19. The same I have given, but did I done any mistake? So go to its properties, org.spring framework. Sometimes we will give the spell mistakes, right? Spring, SPRING, Spring framework, artifact ID, Spring-Web MVC, and then the 4.3.19 release. Did I give any mistake in the release? No. This seems to be, I have given some mistake. Just let me check. 4.3.19 release, type is jar file. This is fine. Now let me save it. So it is now downloading. Yeah, still it is saying there is no artifact with that name, but maybe let us go with the 4.3.18 release and then just let us save. Now see 4.3.18 is resolved. Seems to be there is some issue with this 4.3.19 release from the Maven central repository itself only, because it is not downloading for us. But when we downgrade to 18, it is downloaded. Fine. Now there is one important thing we need to observe now. What is that? Just go to this dependency hierarchy. See this. We just were added only one dependency, but all other dependencies were also got downloaded. So we were added this Spring-Web MVC. So Spring-Web MVC, when we were added, see it downloaded. So when we add this Spring-Web MVC, it downloaded the AOP, beans, context, core, expression, and web. So we just was added only one dependency, but for us, all other dependencies also came. Now, if we can see the Spring-Web is depending on AOP, beans, context, core. Now see Spring-Web is depending on the AOP, beans, context, core. So this AOP, beans, context, core is nothing but the Spring IOC container. So AOP, beans, context, core is nothing but the IOC container. This is nothing but the IOC container. So now if you can see Spring core is depending on the AOP, beans, context, core. These are nothing but the IOC container related dependencies. See, these four dependencies Spring-Web is depending on. Those dependencies also we got here because Spring-Web MVC is also depending on this one. So this is called what, transitive dependencies. This is called transitive dependencies. So what is transitive dependencies? Maven follows the transitive dependencies. Transitive dependencies. So what is transitive dependencies? First, Maven supports the transitive dependencies. What are the transitive dependencies meaning? So transitive dependencies meaning transitive dependencies meaning if we add a dependency called Z, and if it depends on Y, and if the dependency Y also depends on the X, then when we try to add Z, we will also get the Y, and we will also get the X. So these are called as transitive dependencies. These are called as transitive dependencies. You got the concept, right? Transitive dependencies concept. So Maven supports the transitive dependencies. What is the meaning of transitive dependency? Transitive dependency meaning if we add one dependency called Z, and if it depends on Y, that means if the Z depends on Y, and if the dependency Y also again depends on X, right? Then when we try to add the dependency Z, we also will get the Y, because Z pulls the dependency Y pulls the dependency X. As a result, X is also in our project, Y is also in our project, Z is also in our project. So there is a problem also with this one. Going forward, we will discuss how Spring is, how the Maven is intelligent to solve the version related issues. What I mean to say is Z is depending on Y, right? Y is depending on X. For example, we were added one more dependency called C. Maybe C is also depending on Y, but this version is, let's say, 3.1, and Z is depending, whose version is 3.5. Now in our project, we will have the dependencies called Z. We will, in the project, we have the dependencies called Z and Y and X and also C. Then which version of Y got downloaded? Either 3.1 or 3.5. So that is a different story. How it will be resolved, the version conflicts, I will discuss later on time going forward. But for now, you just understand the meaning of the transitive dependencies, right? If the Z depends on Y and Y depends on X, then all the Z, Y, and then X will come to our project. So that is called transitive dependencies. So Maven supports the transitive dependencies approach. So this is what the the dependency we were added. And if you can see, the scope is not mentioned here. That means by default scope is the compile. Default scope is the compile. So let us go to one more time these dependencies. Now I will add one more group ID called Java x.servlet. So I want to have a servlet dependency also, just in case. So servlet dependency I want to have, and version maybe 3.0. But this servlet dependency, I will take it as a runtime. I will take the scope as a runtime. Now just click on save. What is that runtime scope meaning? Let us see. Let us see. Now probably this 3.0 is not the right version. So that is the reason it didn't detect it. Let us give 3.1. And then let's verify. Yes, 3.1. Oh, 3.1 is also not there. Let us verify the version of the servlet. Java x.servlet Maven version. So what is the Maven version? We have, let us verify. 3.0.x is there. Just scroll down. Java x.servlet, servlet-API. So we have the dependencies called servlet-API. One moment. Let me go to Java x.servlet. Just scroll down. Java x.servlet. Fine. So let us add this Servlet API. One moment. Servlet Maven dependency and Java X Servlet. Servlet API or Java Servlet API. So this is what exactly we want. So 3.1.0 is there. 3.1.0. Did you observe versions also we are taking care? So what is the group ID? Java X.Servlet-API is the group ID. So group ID is Java X.Servlet and artifact ID is Java X.Servlet-API and then version is what? 3.1.0 and scope is runtime. Scope is runtime, not runtime. Let me change the scope to the provided. What are these actually? So what is the meaning of scope runtime? What is the meaning of scope provided? So let us go here and then write the Maven scopes here. I believe you got the transfer dependencies now. So let me check Maven transfer dependencies. Now let us see this Maven dependency scopes. So what are all the scopes we have? A scope, a dependency scope will defines how the dependency will be available in our project. So what is that means? What is that means? That means, okay, so that means will the dependency package as part of our application build or not? So that means what? Will the dependency package as part of our application build or not? And will the dependency available at the time of compilation, source code compilation, at the time of source code compilation or not, right? So etc. So these are all the meaning, like whether they are available to our project or not, meaning whether the what I mean to say this build. So dependency, the dependency package. So will the dependency package as part of our application build or not? What does it mean? What does it mean is, just let me go here. Now we have taken two dependencies, right? WebMVC and then Servlet dependencies we have taken. Now what we will do is, let me do a Maven clean and then let me do a Maven build to create the var file. Now to create the var file, let me build the Maven. Let me do the Maven build. So run as Maven install. Now there is a difference between install and then package also. We'll discuss. But now when we run this one, we will get a var file. So done. So we will get the var file. So go to this one, we will get the var file. Just refresh. We will see a var file, isn't it? Now this var file is also extracted here. Go to WebInf, go to lib. See this? In this lib, WebMVC expression core context beans AOP commons logging. These are all were there as part of our application packaging called vShopify e-commerce MVC snapshot.var. So that is the meaning of this one. Will the dependency package as the dependency packages as part of our application build or not? Meaning when we build the application, that is var or jar file, whether that contains the dependencies that we were mentioned in the pom.xml file or not is the definition of the scope. So in Maven, we have the following scopes available. Number one, compile. So when a dependency, so this is the default scope of any Maven dependency. This is the default scope of any Maven dependency. So when a Maven dependency is with the scope compile, it will be available at the source code compilation time, and also will be available as part of the application build. That is the compile scope. Next scope is what? Provided. So when a Maven dependency is with the provided scope, so when a Maven dependency is with the scope provided, it will not be provided, it will be available at the source code compile time. It will be available at the source code compile time, but will not be available as part of the application build. So what is this meaning? If we can go to this pom.xml file, we were added this servlet with the provided scope, but do you see the servlet dependency is there in our build file? That means in our var file. Do you see the servlet dependency? No. That means what? Servlet dependency is available at the time of the source code compilation, but once after the source code compiled and then the build has been prepared, in that build this dependency won't be there. Then who will provide? So it is always the responsibility of the server to provide this dependency at runtime, when the application var or er will deploy in the server. So simply I will use when the application package will deploy in the server. You got it right? It is always the server's responsibility. It is always the responsibility of the server to provide this dependency. So that is the reason, if we can go and then see most of your Tomcats, your Tomcat will have the, for example, Apache Tomcat. Where is Apache Tomcat? Yes. So your Apache Tomcat will have the Servlet and then JSP dependencies. See this? Servlet API, JSP API. That means what? As the server is, however, providing these dependencies, we no need to be package that dependency as part of our application build. So to exclude it from our application build, we will mention it with the scope called provided, right? And there is one other scopes actually, if you can see. So provided and then compile. Then the scope is runtime, scope is test, scope is system. About these going forward, we will discuss. Okay, fine. Now we were added these two dependencies. Fine. So finally, if you can go to the pom.xml file of it, our pom.xml file is something like this. Now let us go to our application now. So we were added the dependencies required to develop the Spring Web MVC application. So now let us create the package. Package different, artifact different, group ID different. Group ID meaning is different, artifact ID meaning is different, package meaning is different, right? Group ID meaning it is the organization who is funding to develop this project, and artifact ID meaning it is the application name, and then package name meaning where the application source code will resides. So always package name will be with the three words. So com dot b Shopify dot commerce. Just stop your video. Yeah, so com dot b Shopify dot commerce. So that is what the not commerce, retail. So com dot b Shopify dot retail e-commerce. Retail e-commerce is our package name. And remember, all the package names should be always a smaller. So com dot, okay, for now what I will do is just let me take com dot v Shopify dot retail e-com. Okay, so com dot v Shopify dot retail e-com. Always package name should be with the 3 letters, 3 words, not letters, 3 words always. That is standard. Yes, can you please mute? So always package name with the 3 words. So just click on finish. Now in these 3 words, now we got the 3 words package, right? So package is now there. Now go to our architecture. So in our architecture, so what is the observations? What is the observations here? What is the observations here? Step 1, add the dependencies. Add the dependencies with the appropriate version numbers, isn't it? This is what we have done. We identified the appropriate version number of a particular dependency and then we were added. This is the step 1. And now step 2. Can you please fine. I was removed the mute option for you. You cannot unmute yourself. Okay, I have to unmute. If you have any questions, just raise your hand. I will unmute you. Fine. So step 2 is what? Go to our architecture. In our architecture, what is the primary component? Dispatcher servlet. So first we need to configure the dispatcher servlet. Then next we need to configure. The view resolvers to resolve the views by the dispatcher servlet. Correct. We are now discussing about the Spring Web MVC application building. So in Spring Web MVC application, always we will have a front controller. So we will do one thing. Before doing this front controller configuration, first let us create one controller configuration, a simple controller configuration. Let us do. So go to here and let us create one more package here. So ecom dot controller. Okay. So this is the controller, to note it as a controller. And then next to what? New package dot service if required. Otherwise, control is good enough for us. Now let us write one controller. Class home controller. So in Spring Web MVC, to indicate that this is a controller, we have a stereotype annotation called @controller. So what is this @controller annotation will do? So we have a stereotype annotation called @controller. So what this @controller annotation will do? So carefully observe, please. Carefully observe. Interviewers will ask you the questions like, what happens? Okay, first of all, let me recall you how many types of stereotype annotations we have. So step 2, create a controller. Using the stereotype annotation. @control. Right. Now, what is the stereotype annotations? First of all, how many stereotype annotations we have? So this is already, in our Spring Core sessions, we know all these things. So number 1, stereotype. Stereo meaning fixed at a particular, fixed at a particular location. Stereo meaning fixed at a particular location. That is the meaning of the stereo. So stereotype annotation meaning the annotations that we were fixed at the particular location. So that is the reason controller is always fixed at the location. Controller always fixed at the location on the class level. Always fixed at the location on the class level. So stereo meaning fixed at a particular location. And hence always stereotype annotations will be fixed at usage on class level. Okay, always our stereotype annotations will be fixed at the usage of on the class level. We can use only at the class level. So we can use only at the class level. Because fixed, stereo meaning fixed. So in Spring Core container, we have the following stereotypes. We have the following stereotype annotations. I already have given the notes on this, right? Stereotype annotations. We already have discussed in our Spring Core session, but I'm just recalling you. So in Spring Core container, we have the following stereotype annotations. Number 1, component, and number 2, service, and 3, controller, and then 4, repository. And if you can see, let me go back to our class notes. Just let me go back. I believe I already have given these notes to you. Just let me go and then show one diagram to you. That is the reason I am going to the our class notes. Just bear with me. Just bear with me. Let me open the notes and then showcase you the training Spring Boot MS Cloud, Spring Boot Duck, Spring Core notes, stereotype annotations. So let me open these notes. I already have shared these notes in our Google Classroom. So if you can see here, this is what we have seen. So component, controller, REST controller, service, repository, indexed. These are all called as the stereotype annotations. If you can see here, component. So component is the super annotation. So every class which is annotated with the controller, service, repository, these are all. So when a class is annotated with the controller, service, repository, these are all subtypes of the component. So we already know a feature called component scan, right? So we already know a feature called component scan. What does it mean? Component scan meaning scanning all the application packages for the suitable right candidates. This is very important. I'm using a word here called right candidates. What are the right candidates here? So what are the right candidates here? Any class which is annotated with component, which is annotated with component, or its subtypes, is called as a right component. It's a right candidate. So scanning all the application packages for the suitable right candidates. Component scan will do what? It will scan all the application packages, whatever the application packages we have taken, like controller, service, repository, right? Maybe utilities, whatever the packages we will take here. So this component scan feature will scan all the packages and then looks for the right candidates. So right candidates meaning the classes which are annotated with a minimum of component or any of its subtypes. So these are called the stereotype annotations. So that is the reason controller is also one of the stereotype annotation of the component. So when we attach controller, it will be automatically get scanned by our component scan and then register as a Spring Bean in our Spring IOC controller. Then there is an important interview question. In the place of controller, can we use service annotation? In the place of service annotation, can we use repository annotation? So basically the annotations can exchange. That means of controller, in place of it, we can write service. It will be detected and then created as a Spring Bean, but it will lose the capability of this controller annotation. So controller annotation have a lot of capabilities. So what are those capabilities? I repeat one more time, please. This is very, very important interview question. So I repeat one more time, very, very important interview question. So what is the important interview question is, can we use the service annotation in place of controller annotation? So this is the very, very important interview question. Most of you folks might say yes or no, mixed answers in your mind. First of all, why we are using the stereotype annotations? Tell me why. Because the classes which are annotated with the stereotype annotations will be created as a Spring Beans. Our primary goal is what? First, to make it as a Spring Bean. Correct. So if in the place of controller, if we use service is also a component annotation. So Spring Bean will be created. Spring Bean will be created for the controller. Excellent. Spring Bean will be created for the controller, but Spring Bean is created, but can we use okay, but can we use service in place of controller? Okay, there is one more question. So can we use the service annotation? Can we use the service annotation in place of repository annotation? So this is also one more important interview question, right? And the third question, so can we use repository annotation repository annotation in place of service annotation? Service or component. Now these three are the confusing interview questions for us. We need to understand in depth of them. Then only you will be able to answer these questions, right? So we need to understand the concept in depth first. Number one, in place of service, if I use repository, Spring Bean will be created or not? 100% Spring Bean will be created. If I use service in place of controller, for example, here home controller, we are using controller here. Now rather controller, if I will use service, Spring Bean will be created for or Spring Bean will be created for it or not? So Spring Bean will be created. Ideally, it should have to create, but controller have a powerful feature. What are those features? Let us go inside of this controller annotation and see the definition of this controller annotation. Then you came to know the power of this. So this annotation indicates that an annotated class is a controller, web controller. So controller meaning Go to our diagram. This is controller. So to indicate it as a controller, when it is said to be a controller, then definitely that controller will have the request handling logic, request input validation logic, right? Response processing logic. These are logics definitely be associated to this controller, meaning the controller should be able to perform at least the request and then response handling logics, isn't it? The controller should have to be perform at least the request and then response handling logics. Then only we can say it as a web controller or controller. So @controller indicates that an annotated class is a web controller. So this annotation serves as a specialization of the component, correct? Because it is the subcomponent of this controller is extending the component, component. That means what? Controller is a specialization of the component, allowing for implementation classes to be auto detected. We know when something is a component, at least it will be auto detected through the class path scanning or component scanning. Then it is usually used in combination with annotated handler methods based on request mapping annotation. This is very, very, very important statement. Always @controller annotation will be used in combination with the annotated handler methods based on the request mapping, request mapping annotation. That means what? So this controller will be always works with the combination of the methods which are annotated with the request mapping annotation, right? That means what? Request handling logic is there in this controller. So now let us answer the questions. What is the first question we have written? The first interview question is, can we use @service in place of @controller annotation? My answer is yes, but we lose the power of controller. We use the power of controller. That is the request and response handling logic. We lose the power of controller. That is the request and then response handling logic. So we lose this. We can use @service in place of @controller, but we cannot use the power of controller, that is the request and then response handling logics using request mapping annotation. This we can't do. This we cannot do. Got it? Yes. Interviewer when asked, can we use the @service annotation in place of controller? Yes, we can use. Why not we can't use? But that is not a controller then. When it is said to be a controller, it will perform. So now, usually controller will perform the below operations. What are them? Number one, request data binding. Number 2, request data validations. Number 3, exception delegations. Exceptions delegation. All these sentences may be tough for you at this moment, but later in time you came to know. And response content preparation, response content type. So response content type preparation, right? And then view pages, that's okay. So at least these 4 we can consider. So request data binding, request data validation, response content, right? Yes, exceptions delegation, response content type preparation. So these are all what the controller will do. So if we replace @controller with the @service, then we lose the power of this controller. It won't able to take the request data, and then it won't able to serve the responses. Okay, so that's all for today, folks. So tomorrow, let us continue and then complete this home controller implementation. Any questions for me for today? Any questions? Okay, if no questions, then tomorrow we will complete this home controller implementation, meaning Spring Web MVC implementation. And these notes I will upload in our classroom. Today's classroom, I will upload these notes. Go and then get it. Okay, so a lot of useful information we discussed, I believe. So tomorrow, don't miss the session, because we also will discuss lot many things while implementing the Spring Web MVC project. And then finally, we will see the developer stress in implementing the Spring Web MVC application. Then we will take off the developer stress by only making the developer to be work on the business logic, not on the configurations using the Spring Boot. That we will see in our coming up sessions. So any questions for me? So fee is okay. Yeah, the fee is 8,000. I think fee is 8,000, and talk to our backend team. And for the coming 2 sessions, you join on the same link till Friday. You join on the same link. Okay, so whoever are interested, please start your registrations, because by Friday our link will be expire. Meaning Friday we have the session on the same link, but from Monday onwards the new link will come. Okay, so whoever are interested, feel worthy, this go and then start your registrations. Fine, so that's all for today, and then see you tomorrow. Thanks.